Okay, here's a real mind bender for you. What if one single being could be, well, the most powerful thing in the entire universe, but at the same time, an agent, acting on someone else's behalf? It sounds impossible, right? Well, today, we're going to dive into a classic theological text to see if we can solve this exact puzzle, a divine contradiction that has, believe me, kept people guessing for centuries.
And this is where the puzzle really starts to come into focus. I mean, look at this. On one side, you've got scripture just piling on these titles of absolute divinity for the Son, only begotten God, the power of God, the name above every name. You can't get much bigger than that, right? But then the language just completely flips. All of a sudden, we're hearing phrases that sound, well, different. They sound like he's an agent, maybe even subordinate. Things like, through him we have access. I received a commandment. He is sent. So how on earth can both of these things be true at the exact same time? That is the heart of the puzzle we're tackling.
So you gotta ask, right? Is this just a massive contradiction baked into the very nature of the divine? How can you be the roaring lion, the absolute power, and also the obedient lamb, the instrument of that power? It just feels like a paradox that can't be solved.
But what if the conflict isn't really in the divine being? What if the conflict is in us, in how we're reading the words on the page? See, the author of the text we're looking at, they suggest something pretty radical. The problem isn't a contradiction at all. It's just that we're misunderstanding the language. And that idea, that we're just misunderstanding the language, that's our first big clue. To really see what the author means, they ask us to zoom way in on just one tiny, seemingly simple phrase. Through him. Okay, so this is the key insight. We almost always read through him like it's a one-way street, right? Like an order coming from a boss to an employee. But the author says, no, you're looking at it all wrong. It's actually a dynamic two-way flow. Think about it. The Father's grace comes down to us through the Son. And our access, our acceptance, it flows up to the Father through the Son. He's not just some kind of divine delivery guy. He's the actual bridge connecting everything. And this quote just nails that change in perspective. This is not some lowly and subordinate ministry, far from it. Being that conduit, that bridge, is an act of incredible power. It's succor rendered in the power of his might. I mean, think about it. A bridge isn't a weak thing, right? It's the thing that has to bear all the weight. All right, so looking at the word through in a new light definitely helps. But what about all those different names the Son gets called? The next piece of our puzzle. Well, to figure that out, the author points us to the incredible variety of these titles in Scripture. And here it is, the big insight. We've been reading these names completely backwards. The author argues they aren't meant to define his essential nature, like what he is. No, they're meant to describe his actions, what he does, all the different ways his power actually connects with humanity. And just look at the variety here. It's pretty stunning. Shepherd, king, physician, bridegroom, way, door, rock. The list goes on. Each one of these isn't some label that boxes him in. It's a living, breathing metaphor for a very specific and very powerful way that he helps and cares for all of us.
Let's just take one of those as an example. He's called physician, right? Well, that's what he's called when he's actively healing a soul that's been beaten down by sin. So the title describes a specific, powerful action of healing. It's almost like a job title, It tells you what he's doing, not the sum total of who he is. And it's the same thing with door. He's called a door in the moments when he is providing safety and access to, spiritual pasture. So again, the name is all about a function, an action of divine power and care. He is the one opening the way and granting that safe passage. So when you look at it this way, all these different names don't diminish his divinity at all. In fact, they do the exact opposite. They magnify it. They become this amazing testament to the countless ways his power and love are shown to us. So from this perspective, the more names he has, the more powerful he is shown to be. Okay, let's take a breath. So, through means a two-way conduit, and the many names are all about powerful actions. That clears up a ton, right? But it leaves us with the final, and honestly, the trickiest piece of this whole puzzle. What do we do when the Son says, point blank, that he received a commandment from the Father? I mean, that sounds like slam dunk proof of subordination, doesn't it? But just like before, we're being asked to think a little deeper about the words we're using. For you and me, a command implies a boss and an employee, a top-down hierarchy. But what could a word like command
possibly mean between two beings who are perfectly equal, who share the exact same will? You start to realize our human definition of that word might not even apply here.
And the author of our text? They just flat out reject our everyday understanding of command. They basically say it's absurd to picture the Father giving a spoken order, like a teacher lecturing a student, to the being who is the wisdom and power of God. That's just us trying to force our limited human way of thinking onto a divine reality it was never meant to describe.
And this brings us to the author's most beautiful and powerful metaphor for solving this. They say, stop thinking of a command and start thinking of a mirror. The Father's will is perfectly, instantaneously reflected in the Son. There's no time delay, no need for instructions, and absolutely no subordination. It's just a perfect, immediate, and complete unity of will. And you can see the two ideas side by side here. Our human understanding of a command is all tangled up with superiors, with time, with teaching. But in the divine reality the author is describing, commandment is just a word, a metaphor for an instant reflection. It doesn't imply an order. It reveals a will that is already perfectly shared. It's a word that's actually about unity, not hierarchy.
And that is how the Son can say, "He that has seen me has seen the Father." It's because the will, the purpose, the goodness itself, it's not just similar, it's identical. The mirror isn't showing you a copy or a slightly different version, it's showing you a perfect, unified reflection.
All right, let's put all these puzzle pieces back together and see what the big takeaway is from the author's argument. So here's the solution, all laid out for us. First, through him isn't about being a subordinate. It's about being a powerful two-way bridge for grace. Second, all those different titles don't point to a lesser nature. They show us the incredible variety of his divine actions. And finally, the commandment isn't an order from a boss. It's a metaphor for a single unified will, just like a reflection in a mirror. So when you put it all together, all that language that looked like subordination doesn't contradict his divinity one bit. In fact, it does the opposite. It powerfully affirms the deep, unbreakable unity of the Godhead.
When you really get down to it, the entire solution boils down to a single powerful number, 1. One unified will, perfectly shared, perfectly reflected. That simple idea is the key that unlocks this entire puzzle, turning what looked like a glaring contradiction into a beautiful statement of divine unity.
And that just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This whole complex, centuries-old theological puzzle was basically solved by taking a closer look at simple words like through and commandment. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other huge, complex truths are we missing out on? Not just in theology, but in our own lives, about power, about purpose, about unity, all because we're trapped by the limits of our everyday language.